So my name is Michael Leibreich, and welcome to the next session. I've just arrived, so I haven't heard everything that's gone on up till now. But what we're going to talk about is global threats and UK responses. Now, I'm not going to be able to cover all of that, but what I will talk about, my background is that I founded New Energy Finance, an information provider on energy and transportation. I sold it to Bloomberg. I'm also on the board of Transport for London, and I make various angel investments and so on. So I have a perspective on the shifts that are going on in energy and transport, which are, after all, causing the majority of the climate challenge and also the air quality challenge that we face. And I'll talk about some of the trends, where all this is going in the world, because these industries are not staying static. The world is actually changing very dramatically, moving towards cleaner solutions. And for the UK, the question is that a threat? Are our industries going to be left behind, or is it an opportunity? Do we have assets that are useful? Can we lean in and benefit in the post-Brexit world? So I'll go very quickly through some of the changes and some of the trends. What you see there is money flowing into clean energy. This doesn't include nuclear or some of the solutions will clearly be part of the future, but it does include the sort of the new technologies, renewables, the energy efficiency, power storage, and so on. And this is the bit that the financial services see. This is not every little piece of investment in every within every company's R&D program, but this is the bit that the financial sector, of course, based in London for the foreseeable future, and I hope forever, sees. And you can see there it grew to about $300 billion per year. To put it in perspective, all investment in energy anywhere in the world is about 2 trillion, so it's significant, but it's not a majority. But the interesting thing is if you look at the installation of renewable energy within the electrical system, just the electrical system, which is a subset of that 2 trillion, then you can see that 300 billion has been buying more and more capacity. So one of the questions is, what's going on? Is this a real shift? Is this something significant or not? The answer is it is significant. This is the proportion of renewable energy in the electrical mix around the world. You can see these very substantial growth rates pretty much everywhere. And so you get serious, significant economies, Spain, UK, Germany, growing to around 30%. I think these figures are 2016. Germany is over 30%. And I think it's fair to say if anybody had told us, anybody in this room, if they told us that by this year the UK would be around, would be over 25% renewable energy, based on spending which amounts to around sort of 1 cappuccino per household per week, I think we would have thought that was an outrageous forecast, unbelievable. But that's what's happened. We are one of the success stories in terms of shifting a big chunk of electricity, not just out of carbon-based, but also out of the grasps of some of our good friends in the world, like Vladimir Putin. The reason for that growth, the reason why 300 billion invested across clean energy, not all of that, by the way, is in renewables, but the reason why that spending buys you more and more is this. I never give a presentation without showing experience curves, because clean energy technologies are manufactured technologies. They have very strong experience curves along the lines of material science, software, manufacturing. These are not resource curves. This is not oil, gas, coal that you dig out of the ground. Their costs come down very rapidly as you gain experience and knowledge and scale. So if you look on the left, that's a solar farm in 2005. That's a solar farm in 2017. Remember, this is not just UK we're talking about here. I'm talking about trends that are happening globally. Wind turbines, when I started New Energy Finance, there you can see a 4 megawatt wind turbine. That was considered a monster. Of course, what we've seen since is that, the growth there, up to 7 and then 9 megawatt turbines. And now we're seeing these super large turbines. GE has just announced a 12 megawatt turbine, and by the early 20s, we'll see things like that being installed. my mother doesn't actually know what I do, so I showed her some of this, and she said, "That's amazing, and those things are that's really big." She said, "But why would you build it in front of the Shard?" So where we are now globally is that if you're looking at the cheapest form of new electricity from any technology anywhere in the world, in history, it is renewable. These are the world record projects. You've got there photovoltaics in Mexico, wind. Mexico has very good wind resource. Also 2 cents, underneath 2 US cents per kilowatt hour. And then offshore wind, 5 cents, these unsubsidized projects that are going to be built in Europe. Now, these are world records. This is not what happens everywhere. This is not the median price. But what we see in the world record becomes the median within some relatively modest numbers of years. This is what we've seen time and again now. I've been tracking it 15 years. It's going to happen. Now, it is variable, and I'll come back to that. But just in terms of the speed with which this has happened, these are doublings. Right? If you move away from resource economics and you talk about manufacturing, or you talk about software, you talk about material science, doublings matter because that's what drives your cost reductions. That is wind, 5 doublings in 17 years. Remember, each doubling pushes you down the experience curve, and this is solar. 8 doublings in 17 years. And we pretty much know what's going to happen next. And this, the difference between the economics of these sorts of manufactured material science, software, network benefit goods, the difference between that and resource economics is why so many traditional energy economists, I'm trying to do this without mentioning Dieter, have simply miscalled the importance of this development. Coal has peaked. It hasn't peaked because of policy or regulation. It's peaked because it's being forced off the system. These are capacity factors. The capacity factors of coal are dropping. Coal is becoming unprofitable to use, unprofitable to build already, unprofitable to use soon. There you see China. On the top right, Chinese coal either has peaked or will, and it's going to drop. In India, this is the former Minister of Energy. The cost of solar power is now cheaper than coal in this country. These people are not making this up. This is what's happening. In the US, of course, we have President Trump trying to make America great again, by reviving the fortunes of coal. Here you have coal plant retirements. They continue. And they will continue, and nobody is building new coal, not one plant. Now, there's a great leader in the shift off coal. That's the UK. That's the history of coal in the UK, that's the Industrial Revolution right the way through. You can see the general strikes, then the coal strike of '84, and being off coal by 2025. Incredible leadership. And by the way, it's unilateral leadership. It's not leadership in response to anybody pushing us from Brussels. Carbon floor price is doing some of this. The decision to very clearly get off coal is doing this. This is UK leadership. And by the way, this is the rest of Europe. This is coal consumption. Literally, we are the only country that is on a definitive path to get rid of our coal in an accelerated time frame. They're going to follow, but the operative word is follow. Now, what's going to happen going forwards to 2040? This is what's going to be invested. Just electricity, remember. $10 trillion is going to be invested. 2/3 of it, $6 trillion, is going to be in wind and solar globally. Do we want to have a part of that, a role in that? The answer is, of course, yes. And by the way, the third one, nuclear, will depend on the economics of nuclear, which we'll come back to. Now, not everybody has understood this, and they're not, what we've got here is Bjorn Lomborg, who is the sort of cheerleader for pretending this isn't happening. He's not wrong when he says solar and wind is 0.6% of primary energy, and it's going to be 3% according to the IEA, who are very are very conservative in their forecasts, 3% by 2040. The problem with this way of thinking about energy is that primary energy, which is what he's choosing to use, 68% of it is waste, goes up the chimney. By saying that wind and solar are not important because they don't meet a primary energy need, he's asking wind and solar to produce waste that goes up chimney. It is absurd. And yet, he is treated as a guru by people across, let's call it, I'm thinking of the right word. Well, you have people at the Global Warming Policy Foundation that channel, that repeat this stuff, 0.6%, et cetera, when they're not slyly insinuating that the Grenfell fire was caused by people trying to take action on climate change and so on. This is regarded as great wisdom. The point is, primary energy is the wrong measure. There it is. There's your 0.6% of primary energy in 2015 coming from wind and solar. It's invisible, absolutely. But actually, in 2015, it was already 5% of electricity. 5% in 2015 is already about 7 or 8% of global electricity. And the IEA, who are conservative, say it'll go to 20% by 2040, and Bloomberg New Energy Finance says 34%. So we are going into a world where a third of our electricity will be wind and solar. It will be variable, but it will be cheap, really cheap. We have to deal with the variability. So, a bit of electrical engineering. You have a grid. You need to balance it. Short term, seconds and minutes, hours and days, weeks and months. You never want the blackout, not whether it's caused by the beast from the east or whether it's caused by some short-term fluctuation. There are ways of dealing with this. Right? We currently use interconnectors and pumped storage. Obviously, lots of this is moving away from the traditional generating power stations. We use interconnectors. We use pumped storage. We're starting to use demand response, batteries, electric vehicles. I'll talk a bit more about those in a second. But there are plenty of other approaches. Plenty of other innovative approaches, whether you're talking about the short-term or the long-term balancing. The problem of intermittency is an engineering problem that can be solved at a reasonable price point. It is not a reason not to do anything on the climate challenge. And we'll need a smart grid, Internet of Things, big data, and so on to thread it all together. So let's talk about electric vehicles. This is not a Tesla ad. We all know that they're the technological leader, the noisiest, but not necessarily going to be the long-term winner. But forecasts for electric vehicles. This is Bloomberg New Energy Finance. By 2040, over half of all cars and light trucks will be electric that are being bought. Over a third of the vehicles on the road will be electric. Why? It's the experience curve, primarily. Battery costs have come down by 70, 80% since 2010. They'll go down by another 70% by 2030, to the point where the sticker price of an electric car will be lower than the sticker price of the equivalent internal combustion car. They're simple vehicles, battery, steering. When it comes to maintenance, you have to fill up the wiper fluid, rotate the tires. There's just not much to do. There's no gearbox, no fuel injection, no exhaust system, simple to maintain, simple to build. They're going to get very cheap. All the car companies have figured out which way the wind blows. They're all building models. That's all the different types of cars. That's the range. It's not just cars. Buses. We have 120 electric buses in London. In Shenzhen, they have 17,000. They've gone fully electric. And commercial vehicles. These are trucks. And there's your big Tesla Semi, as the Americans call it, which might or might not be delivered on time, but is certainly thundering down the roads at us. The main reason that we'll roll them out will be because they're cheap. They will start to be cheaper. That's why we'll get so many of them. But they will also solve this problem. This is London. There's the Shard. You see no wind turbine in front of it. My mum's happy. And it's not just London. If we can fix this problem, we can export solutions, not just to Europe, but also around the world. There is not a major city that doesn't have some form of air quality problem. I think that's a honeymoon couple there on the... So where are we going? Where is the world going? 1/3 of our electricity will be from wind and solar, and the variability will need innovation, solutions, and management. 1/3 of our cars and light trucks will be electric, as will other vehicles, and that will require vast amounts of innovation, investment, and the world will be 1/3 more energy productive. Now, by the way, this is not enough to solve the climate challenge. So in case you're feeling all euphoric and optimistic, we need to do stuff with heat, with industry, with agriculture, etc., etc., etc. So, beyond Brexit, if I might, I'll just remind you of this. This was the Lisbon Strategy, year 2000. By 2010, the EU will be the most competitive and dynamic, knowledge-based economy in the world, capable of sustaining economic growth with more and better jobs and greater social cohesion. Right? How's that working out? The point I'm making is not to refight a referendum. The point is that this is all about innovation, and the EU has not been good at it. Looking forwards, our challenge as we navigate the next few years is to ensure that the UK becomes the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world, capable of sustained economic growth and better jobs and greater social cohesion. That's now our challenge with the tools in our hands. Are we going to do it by doing this? Hinkley, 30 billion subsidy, 82 billion pounds worth of electricity. Where is the knowledge? Where's the innovation? How is that going to achieve it? If you want to do nuclear, do this. The small modular reactors. Small, innovative, quick to deploy. They fit with the trends that I've described in the energy system. But this is where the real innovation comes from. It's all about scale and nimbleness and working with the trends that are sweeping not just electricity, but they'll go right across industry and heating and all those other difficult areas, agriculture, the lot. Chips and sensors will be everywhere. Communications will be everywhere. Processing and storage will be everywhere, whether in the cloud or in the device. And artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data. Now, the UK can win in that environment. We have enormous assets. Whether it's the material science, whether it's the information technology, electrochemistry, we have the car industry, the most advanced vehicle technologies because of our involvement in racing and so on. We have incredible assets. So we're very well poised to win in this environment. And what does it take? I'll leave you with this. It doesn't take subsidies. This is not a plea for subsidies for clean anything. This is about getting joined up government, joined up policy across some areas that we might not be thinking about, like education. It's not just the sort of Horizon 2020 vast project, nuclear fusion in Cadarache. It's not that sort of thing. It's all the way down to trades and apprenticeships. Do we understand? Are we working with the grain of that transformation? Or are we trying to circle the wagons and maintain our expertise in the energy and transport technologies of the past? So we need to go through this list. I've probably missed some things off. And of course, the final one there is trade. The solutions that we generate and use for a green Brexit and beyond will be the solutions that we will also trade around the world, producing vast impact on the environment, but also wealth here at home. Thank you.